Welcome to our Home Coordinates project. My name is Patricia Rawlinson. I'm with Creative Arts Lifestyle, and I'd like to introduce you to our project today. We're going to do this home coordinates. I'm going to show you how you can use a stencil to create your own custom details on here. So the stencil will have everything except the customized things, and then you can use our letter stencils with the template. There's a guideline template that's on the big stencil for you to customize it for your own location. I've done a really cool, I'm going to flip this over because I think that it's so striking that this is not an old board. This is a brand spanking new MDF board. Okay, so I've done this great wax technique and some streaking and some staining using paints. There's a lot to learn in this video. It's pretty short, but it's just loaded with technique. So I hope you enjoy the lesson. Okay, I'm staining my, my MDF surface with a mixture of water, honey brown paint, and matte varnish. Okay, and I want the matte varnish because I want it to kind of seal my surface. Water tends to just kind of not penetrate, but kind of makes surfaces weird. So, and you can make this as strong or as light as you want to. I've got it kind of like 50-50 paint and mediums. 1 part varnish and 1 part water. So, and then we just give it a nice even coat, and it's going to be underneath a whole bunch of texture, so you don't have to worry about whether or not it looks super streaky or whatever. I mean, do a good job, but you don't have to worry about it being too careful with this. Just try not to drip all over the edges. Okay, next we're going to take some of my Clapham's salad bowl wax, and we're going to just streak here and there. Not evenly, just a little bit. You don't need a whole lot to make this technique work. I'm going to want just this awesome streakiness where the paint chips off and reveals what's underneath. We'll do a lot here in the corner. Okay, and so it's just kind of even here and there. Some blocky, some big, some little, that kind of thing. Okay, and we will next apply some more paint. All right, next we're going to apply burnt umber with the same mix as the other stain. And once again, you can decide how strong you want things. Okay, so I'm just going to add this. Probably want that a little bit darker. So add a little bit more. You can see where it's resisting. Burnt umber doesn't usually cover very well, so there we go. That's got a little bit more body to it. Try to keep your lines straight. Drag in a good straight line. It's going to help if you leave some of the streaks like this. It's going to help make it look like it's wood grain. So we want some of those streaks. The idea is this is going to be an old looking board. And then try to blend out your stop and start marks so that they go all the way up and fade out. Okay, next I've got bittersweet chocolate in the same mix. Okay, I'm just going to go right on top. Yeah, I'm going to have to wait. So I shall get the blow dryer. Okay, so now I've got it dried. We're going to go with bittersweet chocolate in the same mix. Ooh, a little bit too heavy. A little bit more water, a little bit more glaze. And it doesn't have to be solid, so I can go streak through that. What's going to happen when we get these layers on here is we're going to sand through them, and it's going to reveal the different colors. Okay, so that's getting nice and streaky. I like it. I'm wanting my handy scraper, but I can't find it, so I'm going to use this other little scraper. The thing that you can do is you can go straight down and scrape and stop, scrape and stop, and it'll start making this look like boards. Don't line up your stops. Yeah, this scraper is not very flat. Get a paper towel and see how that starts looking a little bit like wood grain. And then if you leave this stop marks alone, it will dry into a ridge, and when we sand it at the end, it will actually cause your piece to look like it was on boards, which is kind of a cool side effect. And see how it's scraping out where the wax was? And you want to do this while it's wet. And allow it to dry. All right, I'm going to repeat with red, deep burgundy, plus a little bit of bittersweet and a little bit of black with the water in the stain. And then this, we're going to start streaking and not make it cover everything. I'm just going to really get a little dry brush action going, so see how that's just letting stuff show through. You don't want any base coating. Real light pressure on your brush. Let it just streak out. Pick up more water and color as you need it. And see how these little lines, notice that I left like a million of them right across the middle. Don't do that. That's what doesn't look good. Okay, just a little bit more. Okay, so now we have a reddish brownish board, and we're going to go into black next. All right, I'm going to mix black with my bittersweet chocolate. And I'm going to stand up because I'm getting, okay, that's a little too much. A little bit more water. As you get more towards, as you get more towards the top, you want to stop covering up as much. So we just want it streaky, just want scratches of color, and not a base coat. Try to go in straight lines. And now I'm going to try, while it's wet, going into just black and adding kisses of that in my edges, my corners, streaks of it, just here and there, not everywhere. So just like that kind of thing. It's hard to see when it's wet though. So I'll have a couple little streaks up the middle and up the edges. Okay, so we're going to use a really rough grit sandpaper, sanding disc, and we're going to go back through. Let's see what that does. Look how cool. So that's where the wax was. And don't worry if you think that like the contrast is too much. What's going to happen is we're going to wash over the top of it as well. Okay, I'm needing a rougher grit. So now what I want to do is create some wear through the layers. And it's almost got like a crackled effect. Obviously your edges are going to have a lot of wear. Okay. So just kind of do that evenly and distress it where you need. And if you get any kind of really weird, like maybe you don't like how that's chipping off, give it some extra sanding and we'll take care of that on the next step. And then do make sure you hit the tops of some of these where the grain stopped when you did the pulling technique. Okay, I found myself a piece of rough grit sandpaper, and I like this really rough one because it will leave me little lines and streaks, and it'll really dig into the corners. You want to sand in straight lines as well. Okay, and I'll just do a little bit more on these corners. Okay, so what you're going to do for this is you're going to get a little bit of soapy water on a sponge and you'll just wipe off the waxy residue, and that will prevent it from doing any more residue. Okay, then I'm going to take my brush. I want to tone down my distressing just a little bit, so I'm just going to streak it. So see how that just brought that down. So just streak in some colors, straight lines, and let it dry. Just to tone it down just a little bit. It's just to be a little bit bright. So what that says to me is maybe my initial stain that I built could have been a little bit darker. Okay, and then that makes me a lot happier. I'll get that dry. Okay, I've got this really cute little stencil, and this is a coordinate stencil. So what this is this is your home, and then this is your town. And then these are the longitude and latitude of your town. And it's just a really cool way to give somebody like a wedding gift, or just, you know, celebrate your town. I love this. Anyway, so but the only way that we can make this available for you guys is to make one that you can customize yourself, because we couldn't do like every town in America. That would be like ridiculous. So what we've done is we've come up with this. So we've got in the sizes that go here, there's a bigger one and a little one, and then there's a different font that goes here. So we've got these made as an alphabet, so you can put those into the spots that will make that into your home coordinates. So the rest of it is just a regular stencil, and then these you can chalk this line so that you have a placement line and you always have it straight. So that's kind of a fun little thing. Okay, so we're going to use these wonderful dome stencil brushes, and we're going to pick up a little bit of paint, and then we're going to wipe the paint off. This is how you prevent bleeding under on your stencils, so you want to make sure that you do that. And then if you're going to get really close to, like this is going to be turquoise, then you want to make sure that you tape a little bit right there and there to make sure that you don't get it dirty. I can just add a little bit of tape and a little bit of tape. I should be using stretchy tape because that's not taping very. Actually, I needed to tape off that letter. Anyway, you get the idea. So then we're going to go through, make sure that we're straight. I think I've jockeyed things around. Measure your sides. Make sure your bottom is straight. Use your T-squares. Right, and then we'll go into our lettering, and I talked my brush dry, so I'll re-wet it, wipe it off, and then I'm just going to very gently, you can tap if you want to, but when we get into a project that's this size, it's a little bit easier to swirl. And then I'll lean my brush when I get close to that. If you've just loaded your brush, be careful when you're swirling because you can dig it up underneath your stencil. So once you get the hang of it, you'll know when to do that and when not to do that. So we're going to do all of the rest of the things in the gray, and then we'll do these two coordinates in the teal. You can go back and you can repeat if you feel like you want it stronger. With the busyness of my background, because of all the different textures, I'm going to make this a little bit stronger. That's when you want to watch for that. When you have a lot of busyness, it's going to be really hard to read your letters. So you just make sure you make them nice and bold and not soft and faint, and it'll be okay. And then you can lift and check. See how that's looking. Okay, so I think I can read it. It looks good, nice and crisp. This little swish and swirl technique just really makes a really awesome stenciling technique. You want to make sure you're using these dome brushes. You can do it with flat, but it just isn't the same thing. Okay, I'll switch down a size and get into my desert turquoise. And for the little size, I'll just go in there. I don't want to do steps I don't need, so if I don't have to tape it, I don't want to. So I'll just lean my brush and switch down to a smaller size one and apply that, and then go on with my regular technique. When you're doing your technique, you want to make sure that you're deciding whether or not you want a stipple texture or a smooth texture. When you do the swirl, it does a nice smooth texture. When you do the stipple like this, it does a texture. So I'll go back over that. I want it smooth, and I'll just smooth that out. I'll have to do a couple of coats. The neat thing about wiping stuff off on your paper towel is you end up just doing a couple quick coats. Like, see how that's not covering very well? But I'll just go ahead and get it on there, and then I'll repeat, and it'll take just no time to dry. I don't have to use a blow dryer or anything like that. So it actually is faster to do more coats than one, and try to get it all based. And you're not going to have bleeding under, which is like the #1 thing that people complain about with stencils. So, all right, I've come to the conclusion myself that stenciled letters look a little bit better. If you're going to do something distressed, it looks a little bit better if you go ahead and distress your letters as well. Be careful not to distress too much, so gentle pressure. What I notice is that they just look like they are faded onto the background, and it just gives it a little bit of authenticity. Okay, and then you do the same with your coordinates. Anything that gets busy like this, this Gallipolis, Ohio, you want to just be real easy with your pressure. Otherwise, it can easily make the letters unreadable. All right, we're going to antique the edges just a little bit. I'm going to use a foam brush, and there's kind of a neat little technique. You put it on your brush like this, just pat it in there, and then you lean, instead of being upright, you lean your brush backwards, and it'll do a nice streaky thing. Don't add pressure if it's not coming off your brush, because you're going to be sad. So just a gentle lean, and you'll get some nice streaks. And what that's going to do for us is it's just going to give us a frame around our piece. You can bring it through the piece as well, and then that's just going to add some antiquing. Flip your border around. It's better to draw it towards yourself. And you don't want to do it equally everywhere. Okay, and then we'll go in with the same brush, and we'll go into our slate gray, and we'll add just a little bit of distressing with that. Just like it's been aged and worn. It is a little bit dirty. Not too much. And then we can go back through this, and we can sand that down if we get too much. Like that was just a little bit too much right there. We could also go backwards and go into our other colors if we wanted to have maybe a little bit more brown right there, and go over that with some brown to just disguise it and knock it back. Once again, be careful about making your letters too busy, so you want to keep this technique off to the side just a little bit. Okay, and I think softened. Whoops, hi, that's the gray side. And you can actually sand while it's wet too. So you can just go right on through that, and it'll do all kinds of fun things that way too. Okay, I think we're about there. So that is a super simple, really easy way that you can use stencils to make custom gifts for friends and family.